Hi everyone, welcome back to Thoughtfully. Today we're kicking off a new series where we're going over corporate earnings. And so this first part of the series is what is earnings season and how can I learn more about public companies. Before we go into the meat of today's discussion, I do want to state I am not a legally licensed financial professional. This is not a financial recommendation or advice. This rather is just for informational and educational purposes and the conversation where we can learn more, hopefully, about this stuff. And so now moving on to today's topic. So you know how there's like different holidays or things part of the year where they're like, oh, it's that time of year again, and it's kind of like only like one time of the year. Well, like it's that time of year again within finance, but like this time of year happens 4 times a year, and that time of the year is earnings season. I mean, companies announce earnings, like it can be without earnings season, but like earnings season is kind of like just all these companies are once announcing their earnings, so that's why they call it earnings season. More in depth, like what is earnings season? Is public companies really announcing their financial performances for the prior quarter, or when they're considering like the full year results, their full year annual result. A quarter within business, it's not the 25-cent quarter, it is the year broken down into 4 segments consisting of 3 months. So like think very much like when you see post, I guess, beginning of October, where they're like, okay, it's Q4 2025, it's time to lock in, get the best results, or become the best you before 2026. Like it's that Q4, like, because there's 3 months left until 2026. But anyways, so this is definitely the case of me explaining too much, but I do think it's also going to be beneficial for later parts of this series and even later parts of this video. But within the world of business, there can actually be 2 types of year definitions. So there's your calendar year, which is your typical January through December. For like January 25 to like December 25 is considered 2025. But then there can also be fiscal year. So fiscal year is going to be like what the company considers is their year for accounting purposes. So for example, we're going to be using Tapestry, which is the parent company of Kate Spade and Coach, as an example throughout this series. So their fiscal year actually ends June 28, 25. So for like accounting purposes, they're already within the land of like 2026 because they consider 2025 for them to be July 1, 24 through June 28, 25, I believe. So that's like fiscal year. And again, they do that for accounting purposes. So moving on from that, side note, but I do think it's also beneficial to know that there can be 2 year definitions within business. What is a public company? All right, like we kind of hear public companies, but what does that really mean? So a public company, at least within the US, is a company that's listed on a stock exchange. And being listed through the stock exchange, they're owned by investors who buy shares to own that company. So for example, public companies within the US include Apple, Microsoft, Google, Tapestry, as we're talking about, Nike, and Lululemon. And Lululemon is an interesting example that we can talk about. They're actually based in Canada, I believe, and Vancouver. However, they did decide to list on the NASDAQ, which is a US-based exchange right in Midtown Manhattan. So in terms of considering public companies within the US, Lululemon can't be considered a public company within the US. And as a result of that, they have to follow all the same regulations that the SEC imposes on public companies within the US for documentation filings. And so the SEC, or as that's the short name, but it's the Securities and Exchange Commission, they require public companies to file certain documents so that investors can have a bit more transparency into the financial performances of these companies. So the 2 documents that we're specifically going to be talking about within today's post and the next post are the 10K and the 10Q. So the 10Q is a quarterly documentation talking about the financial performance for that quarter, and then the 10K is the annual results of what happened for that company. So going back to Tapestry, since they already finished their 2025 fiscal year, they actually filed their 10K on August 14, 2025. Now we will cover this in an office hours video, but I wanted to briefly touch on it here. So there are 2 ways in which you can actually find the 10Q and the 10K. The first way is by doing an EDGAR search on the SEC's website. So you would type in SEC EDGAR. From there, you can search the company's name and find the 10Q and 10K along with other SEC filings that the company needs to file on the SEC's website. But you can also go to the company's investor relations or investors webpage and find the documents there along with like supplemental presentations and press releases about whatever they want to announce to investors. So be on the lookout again for the office hours video where we will dive deeper into how to actually search the websites for these two documents. But I hope today's video was helpful just to kind of learn more about what public companies are, what is earnings season, how you can probably learn a bit more about financial performances of the companies that we kind of like talk about on a daily basis, like interact with, but we don't really know about like how they perform each quarter financially. Other videos that you can look forward to in this series include kind of how to read a 10K and 10Q, how to listen to earnings calls, because companies will host calls where they'll talk to analysts and answer questions that analysts might have. This is something I really enjoy listening to and kind of learn more about public companies. I'm so excited to share this series with you all. But anyways, have a good one. See you next time.